watch us back later, or do we get in trouble for saying the wrong thing?
No, we'll get in trouble. As a matter of fact, Mr. Lindsay has asked me for a supercut of Stuart. A Stuart supercut that he wants to check later, as soon as he's done with his live show.
There will be a lot of snark.
I have a staff of editors that are doing supercuts of each attendee.
Yeah, I have a snark meter, so you better watch that.
I want to see just what Guy said.
I got both notifications that we're live on YouTube now.
All right, cool. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you happen to be just tuning in on YouTube, which I doubt because it literally just went live, you're watching a show there. Now, if you're watching it recorded later, you can look down at the bottom, and there's all kinds of information there. Watching the show is fun. I will tell you that doing it live is much more interesting. So if you want to get up earlier in the morning or whatever time zone you live in, follow the link down below in YouTube, and it will take you to the Zoom meeting that we're currently in. Now, if you're in that meeting and you're in the webinar, you might be tempted to like use the chat window, and although you're more than welcome to use. Actually, can attendees do that anyway? We don't really read that. So, but in the chat window, Chad has put a link to Mukana, and Mukana is is Alex's sort of a custom Q&A empire, if you will. And so that's the best place to ask questions. It's the best place to talk and share links. Sometimes you'll hear somebody say something and you go, oh, I have the answer to that. So that's the best place to do that. Now, the discussion here, that's what we do. And if you're listening and you think, these guys don't know what they're talking about, or I'd like to hang out with some friends that, obsess over the same nerdy stuff that I do, follow that link, get here early enough, come in. Sorry, there's some extra noise here. Get in early enough. We'll want to see and hear your mic because, we're trying to keep the quality up. And we do that by like 6:40 every morning. So show up. Join the conversation. A lot of us have. With that, and the Q&A thing, this show is really driven by you. So your input to the Mukana is what we will talk about. And also keep in mind that you can vote up and vote down questions in Mukana. So with that, Bill, what's the first question?
It comes from Steve Bauer in Seattle. And Steve asks, in the 6 a.m. hour, Chris Wojack mentioned his ATEM Facebook group. If he doesn't mind me joining, what is the group called?
That's a good question. Chuck?
Well, what I mentioned was I had just done a class, and that was actually for an entrepreneur group that I'm a part of. Guy, I don't know who created the other group that you made me moderator of, but the Blackmagic ATEM Mini user group Star New is the one where we're doing ATEM Mini support.
Wait. The Facebook group includes the name Star New in it because there was an old one
there was an old one. Yeah, guy who created that.
One of our former employees that unfortunately passed away created it, and so we had to make some moves to create a new one after his demise. So the new one is awesome, and you can ask questions, and a few of us are over there to help moderate and answer questions and even make videos on the questions. So feel free to ask away. I'll put a link in the chat.
Just out of curiosity, and I ask because this happens, did the old group kind of become locked out because the passwords went with him, or?
No, we were able to. I was still an admin as well. It was that there was some other stuff behind it, but anyways,
just curious. Yeah, I've heard multiple stories of people who have passed away where Apple will help you get. I guess you have to show a death certificate or something, but Apple will help you. Get into devices if need be. A little sad and morbid. Victor.
On Facebook, sad and morbid, but you can also set up a pre-existing default person in the case you should pass on. Same thing with Google. I've done that for my wife and suggest that we all do it.
Jeffrey, then Chuck, and Jan.
Yeah, just just did that with my father a few months ago, and the funeral home goes through the whole thing and how many death certificates you need to send out, so they'll help you through that whole thing.
Chuck?
I was going to let Jan go first.
Well, I said Jeffrey, then Chuck, then Jan.
Well, because I was going to apologize for turning this into a morbid discussion. So
I think it was mostly me. Jan?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, thanks for the morbid discussion, but I will tell you that I am putting together
Going
some
downhill.
information.
I'm
It's
sorry,
all right.
Alex. I apologize.
Look, there's certain things that you need to know, and most people don't even know about it, how important it is before you die that you have certain things together. Otherwise, your relatives or people like, no passwords. It's a horrible thing, but that's not what I was going to say. I wanted to ask about, is tomorrow an ATEM mini show? Is that correct? Is tomorrow the ATEM mini show on office hours?
Looks like it. Yep.
Okay, because I have some questions, and I'm looking forward to being there tomorrow
Cool.
to ask some questions about the ATEM
Welcome
mini.
to see you. Sky.
So, to the point of morbidity, as a person who has survived a brain tumor and now has survived 2020, I would like to just again say that we're looking into and shining light on certain subjects that we can control, like the attitude about death. And what my understanding, Leo, is it's referred to as life assurance, not life insurance in your part of the world. Consequently, it's one thing that they're guaranteed that's going to happen. So consequently, let's talk about it. But thank you. Sorry. Is that morbid? Back to you.
It had a cheery sparkle at the end there. Courtney, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just.
And then Leo. Courtney, then Leo. Oh no.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Hear you now.
I was just going to say I keep everything a secret so that when I'm gone, it'll bring my family back together so they can figure out how to get the money.
Leo, then Bill.
So I'll give a slightly more practical answer to that one. So I use 1Password and have next to my wills the one sheet that allows you to get in, and when you crack that open, you get everything of me.
Okay, Bill.
Yeah, I actually think this is one of the most tech germane things, because we all deal in a world of information. That information gets put in these places behind passwords and things like that. And if we're not going to talk about how to handle that responsibly so that you don't leave a mess, I don't know who would. So I think it's quite germane to the discussion.
All right,
here.
I'm getting official word. We're moving on off of this subject. Next question.
Okay, moving to Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen, Germany. Is there anything someone should know when doing captions for YouTube? Any common mistakes that people make?
Jeffrey and Stuart.
It's really simple. KISS. Keep it simple, silly. You want to have keywords in there. You don't want to go long in the tooth. It's one of the issues with the questions that we put in there is they get pretty long. You got a 5,000 word area for YouTube, so make them very succinct, very searchable, and you should be good.
Leland and Stuart.
I put together videos years ago about how to use those particular files, the BTT files, the SRT files, anything that YouTube creates, you have to remember comes after the fact. So make sure your mic is clean, that you're speaking, articulating words rather clearly, and you're not mumbling your words together or having people speak over each other. One of the biggest things if you're doing talking heads is to make sure that people take a couple second pause in between discussions so that those words can get filtered properly, and then go back and check the files that YouTube creates, edit them yourself. That way you can make sure that they're synced up properly, the spelling's correct, capitalization, things like that.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on that. No matter how good the AI is behind that, human speech is just so variable with all the ums, ahs, and the spelling possibilities of multiple words that sound exactly alike but are spelled differently in context. It gets a lot of it right, but you've got to go through with a human being and prune it if you want your captions truly to be authentically professional. Go, Jeff.
Stuart, then Jeffrey.
Just for anyone doing motorsport captions, it is entirely appropriate to the audience to use the word music when describing the noise of the engines.
Jeffrey.
I'm retracting my previous statement because I missed the word captions. So do it as they say it is what I say.
There's I've heard Alex talk about the fact that captions should be no more than 32 characters wide. I prefer captions from a legibility standpoint. I prefer them justified left. I think if you're asking somebody to read something immediately, it's nice if the eye has a certain pin register, like it starts here. When text is centered, your eye doesn't know where the line is going to begin. Now, it's true that I can figure it out pretty quickly, but there is a certain amount of, brain cycles that go to, where is the beginning of the line? Chuck, then Stuart?
I more of just have a story about captions, and that was I was privileged enough to meet one of the creator, I believe, of Otter.ai, and he was pitching it for meetings live in hotel rooms, and it was amazing to see taking my feed out of my soundboard into his computer and having it translate. However, he had an accent, and his own product didn't do too well when he was speaking. So that was something that I thought was interesting. But as far as YouTube goes, yeah, what Leland said, deliberate, slow, and that's why the paid transcriptionists cost so much, right? Because they're known for accuracy, and you can hire different ones based upon industry acronyms, I believe.
I always wonder about that when we pay for transcriptions, because they come out amazingly accurate, and I don't know how they get some of the stuff. They must do a little bit of research on company, because sometimes it's like particular company names and things, product names and stuff like that. Stuart, Leland, Sky, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, captions should always be centers justified, not left justified, because not all languages read from left to right. There are plenty that read top to bottom and some that read right to left. So by putting them so they're center justified, you're not discriminating against anyone.
But the person reading, if my captions are in English and the text is in English, the person reading it is expecting to read English, not Japanese from the top and not something else from the right. So I would push
it's
back on
not about
that
the language,
logic.
it's about the way you're respecting the people who are potentially watching.
I see
Okay.
Chris's point. I see Chris's point.
Sky?
Just with regards...
Oh, sorry, Leland, then Sky, sorry.
Sorry,
Okay,
I'm just trying to... And just with reference to the whole transcription concept, I would always recommend people go with a text overlay within either the platform like YouTube. Facebook does transcriptions on its own as well. I'm sure Twitter will be doing them soon. Or using third-party software. If you do so and can't capture that text in a text file, then you're relying on the text to be burnt into the video. And by doing so, you're stuck with one type of closed captioning, and that's that which was burnt into the video. So if you want various languages on your closed captioning, you're going to have that transcription file, and that's where it's really best done by a personal human transcriptionist. People are looking for those. I have connections to those as well. So Temi and things like that are AI versions that create text files, but the most accurate, like we've been stating, is always the human touch.
And yes, there are multiple services, both in the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States, at least. And they do have humans that augment. Now that AI has gotten as good as it is, the humans will actually go in and modify even those placements and timings. I was also going to mention the artist will hate that you're covering up their image. The director would if you put it on a backdrop, but if you want people to read it, that's often a need. And what I've also seen as a technique, if two people are talking at the same time, to have multiple colors. So have maybe and sometimes they will get artistic in that, and they'll put it as a pink background for a woman and as a yellow background for a man, or an orange back. So, you can get crazy with it, but we also had to do a subtitle of a subtitle. And so it was almost just like a whole text. So back to you.
All right, let's move on. We've killed this. Real quickly, hey, Jeffrey, happy birthday.
Oh, is
Thank
it
you.
Jeffrey's birthday?
And
Jeffrey, happy birthday.
Bill,
Happy
next question.
birthday.
To you. Yes, moving on to TJ Asher's question comes up next. He's sitting there in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I've seen a couple of folks with these small 15-inch portable monitors, and he uses scare quotes around that, hooked up to their ATEM Minis. I purchased one from Amazon only to discover it would not accept the 1080p 30 hertz input from the ATEM, only 50 to 60 hertz. Specific model recommendations on one that will work and has a VESA mount. Note the VESA mount is critical. Not many have them.
That's a good question. It scares me because I literally, in a box over here, I have the small 1920 by 1080 that somebody recommended last week or 2 weeks ago. And VESA mount. Any ideas? Product stuff, go.
Well,
Go,
I had a
Bill.
couple of circumstances where I ordered 2 or 3 inexpensive small monitors for doing that, and they did not work. Most of the ones that I found on eBay that said they were designed to use with Raspberry Pis as one of their features, and I found the ones that had that notation in their description did not work. I sent them back. I eventually ended up using this one from Lilliput, which does have it seemed to take everything. It also has HDMI loop through, which was one of the features I was looking for. So yeah, some I've found do not work correctly. Others do.
Jason, then Marty.
I've had great luck with FeelWorld. They're inexpensive, and I'm not sure about a VESA mount. The real issue with small portable monitors is that it's really hard to get a footprint, in a 100 millimeter VESA mount. And watching Fenwick tear through that is way more interesting than talking about VESA mounts. He just hulked right through that portable monitor. Yeah, there it is.
It is actually a portable monitor labeled portable monitor.
In gold, mind you. Wow. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. FeelWorld is great, and I'm not sure about VESA.
Go, Marty.
Yeah, the VESA mounts are going to be something that's going to be more in the line of a studio grade monitor. And one good place to go for that is ICANN, IKAN. Website is icancorp.com. A monitor that was brought up here in office hours during the Christmas season was from Desk Lab. They had a really good deal on 15-inch monitors. Problem with those is you can only get a desk stand for them. You have to find some other adapter, which I'm currently looking for, to be able to mount them on a stand somewhere.
This thing feels too thin to be a real monitor.
I know, isn't it amazing how thin
It's like
it
a
is?
portfolio.
It's like a
or
wafer.
something.
It's not even a tablet, it's a wafer.
This feels like it's a actual screen protector. It's kind of heavy plastic film. Might want to hold on to not crumple that.
It is a screen protector, and you'll have a double.
Is this the one that you recommended, Courtney?
Yeah, I think it is. Is it silver on the back? Does it have 2 little speakers close together on the back?
It's got the little foldy flappy panel.
Yeah, it's magnetic, right? It comes off.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and it's got a little. It kind of goes like that. Look at that. Yeah.
Multi-stand.
And the reason you won't find VESA mounts on any of these monitors that are that thin is that there's no place for the screws to go. When you screw them in, they actually can poke into the backlight screen. And
this is interesting. It has a headphone jack, what appears to be a headphone jack.
That's where
Would that allow you to hear the output of the ATEM Mini?
Yes, that's what I was going to point out. It does have, that one does have a headphone jack, and I've got it piped into an external speaker, and that's what I use when I'm off wandering around unplugged from my IFB. And the second thing is, it is picky about the frame rate, but you just set your ATEM output to be that frame rate. It didn't work at first, but you can change the output of your ATEM.
Is this some sort of special mini HDMI cable?
Yeah, it's a mini HDMI, but it comes with the cable.
That's awesome. Okay.
2 cables.
All right, Jeffrey.
Yeah, those are meant to be, first of all, those are supposed to be gaming monitors. So gaming monitors should do 60 hertz. I have one right here. This is the ViewSonic. And what the cool thing about the ViewSonic, there's 2 things about this one. One, it's got a kickstand, which is really nice. So I can set it down. I set it down in front of me. The other one is it's a touch screen. So if you're on a Windows system, you can actually use it as a touchscreen. Unfortunately, you can't do it with Mac. You can't do that with the ATEM Mini. I have not set this up for an ATEM Mini, but I think what the one thing that I've got to ask is, how did you plug it in? Because when you plug in the HDMI, you still have to plug in USB for power. And will that work? But it should, if you get most of these gaming monitors, should go 60 hertz because they're meant for gaming.
I can answer the question on the power.
Please.
There's two ports. There's two USB-C ports on this one for power only and one for power plus video, and a separate HDMI mini port. Most of them do have those 3 ports in them, or they'll have a USB mini for power.
Yeah, this one's got a second one, which is power pass-through. But yeah.
Right.
All right, my question, being an ignorant one, and I wanted to get an answer for it. It sounds to me by the question he wants 30 hertz on the monitor display. My question is why? I've always operated at 60 hertz, so I would want to know what the benefit or advantage would be.
Yes, TJ, help us out. Why are you looking for 30 hertz? Did he leave?
Because I've had monitors that won't display it, that give me a fault error if I get it default to 30. It won't even show up on the monitor.
TJ has been at work most of this week, and I think he pops in the early days. And then
he must have dropped that in earlier.
Let's go, Jason, Marty, Stuart, and then we'll move on while I unbox.
Yeah, while he unboxes. This time, don't hulk it because you'll distract me. I use 30 on the ATEM Minis all the time, and it's not for lack of anything other than there's no reason to push the ATEM Mini any harder than it needs to be. As far as I'm concerned, there's exactly one guide when it comes, again, excluding gaming, there's exactly one guide to quality, and it's not resolution, it's bitrate. That's it. So I will take 1080 30 any day over 1080 60. It's just more work, and people have ATEM Minis that are overheating all the time. So yeah, I rarely, if ever, run mine at 60.
So are we talking frame rate here? Because the question was hertz, which would be the frequency of the monitor, and I'm trying to
refresh rate, not frame rate.
Refresh
correct,
rate.
Leland. I think we're complicating this. I think TJ means to say 30 frames, not 30 hertz. Those are two completely different things as far as I know.
More sense. That's what it looks
Jason
like after
said
going back
bit
and seeing
rate,
the
and I
question.
think he meant bit depth is the important part.
I wish it was here. Let's
Yeah, most of these monitors are running on DC anyway, so there is no power.
Well,
hertz.
when I saw 5060 though, that's a 5060 reference is PAL versus NTSC, because overseas everything's run at 50 hertz versus here in the US, which is run at 60 hertz. So it's all a matter of cycle, and the power is why we're using those different frequencies. I'm curious why they take it down to 30.
He just
I
clarified
think
it.
it's probably the refresh rate that he's talking about, or the streaming rate. The 30.
I think this does bring up a good point, though, that when we ask our questions, we should be careful, because I don't think TJ would mix up hertz and frames. Stuart, and then we'll move on.
When he comes back, we'll find out. But I just wanted to show, for the benefit of all the other viewers, that this is the 15-inch desk lab that people were talking about, and it's that thin, and it's got several different interfaces on it. It'll take HDMI, and I think it'll take DisplayPort, but it has no mounting points whatsoever. So you got to be careful about that. But if you're looking for something that has some sort of a mount that can adapt to VESA, that's something that you can put on a stand. I mentioned ICANN. Another really good place to go is Marshall Electronics. So it's marshall-usa.com, and they specialize in field monitors. So those need to be mounted or mountable, and they're not real expensive. You're going to pay for some quality, but they're reliable too.
Stuart?
Okay, firstly, 30 hertz refresh rate is 30 frames per second. You've just got to be old enough to realize that that's the way it was described back in the days of VGA and CGA and the like. TJ, I just had a quick look at the Feel World website, the C-Tech branded ones that they've got in 15 and 13 inch sizes, all seem to have the screw mounts for a VESA mount on the back of it. So I hope that solves your question for you. The Feel World ones have VESA mounts.
All right, I see
Thank
a
you.
couple of hands, but I feel like we've really killed this.
No, Stuart cleared it up perfectly. I have to make a point of that because that was the correct answer. What he just said was the correct answer. The hertz, what we're doing when we do 60 on a 30 on a 60 is we're basically refreshing frames at a time, seeing that same frame twice before we see the final product. So think of that. 30 hertz or frames per second makes perfect sense. I get it now.
Courtney, I have to hear what you have to say. Sorry.
We didn't really discuss the VESA problem. I was going to say what I did is I made my own VESA mounts.
Of course you did.
Of course, credit. And then I used those the things we were talking about yesterday, the 3D
the Velcro things,
command strips from 3M, and I put those in the back of the monitor. Yeah, and then some on the VESA mount, and you just stick it on the back, and it holds pretty well, and it's holding it up. It hasn't fallen off those command strips yet, and they're movable, so they don't scar the back of the monitor if you do want to take them off. And they're thin enough you can still put it back into the case, and they won't make it bulge.
All right, let's move on. Oh, wait, I don't see.
So these screens are so light that I've used the Ulanzi. It's a mount that'll take those light screens piece of cake. So you don't always have to go VESA. Those are made out of aluminum. They're very stable. You can mount those. Okay, moving on. Vincent Alvarez is next from Bellingham, Washington. And Vincent says, just wondering, the factory that burnt down a few months ago in Japan, what type of equipment will this affect the price of? And have you seen an increase yet?
Does anybody know about this news story? Stuart?
Yeah, we covered that several weeks ago. It was the factory that makes the preamp chips for high-end audio gear. So yes, all audio gear will increase in price.
Sky, then Victor? Okay, Victor?
Behringer shipping was impacted for about 4 months, and they're now back in the supply chain.
Okay. Good. Oh, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I heard a news story about a month later saying that some of the other manufacturing companies are taking over some of the chip production until this plant is rebuilt and starts their normal production again.
Alex says that it was A to D converters that was affected. Guy?
Yeah, it was the ATEM Japanese fire, and I noticed as a sound devices dealer that the prices shot up pretty quick, and they mentioned in this article that, yeah, it's A to D converters, and some of the prices of parts went from being a $5 AKM part to being a $110 part. So it greatly affected the industry. So yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I can remember about, it was after the tsunami when the hard drive, no, unrelated.
There was
a spike in hard drive prices in about 2008 or 9. And what I was paying like $90 for a hard drive, all of a sudden we were paying $160, $180. And luckily it wasn't, it was transient. It kind of settled back down. Stuart?
Yeah, the hard drive price spike was due to a flood.
Gotcha. Peter, Alex is saying Thailand. I think Alex really wants to be here. Hi, Alex. Let's move on.
Tony Tang of Chicago is in with any recommendations for an inexpensive, that's under $300 in his world, timecode interface to sync a Mac running Logic Pro or another digital audio workstation with an external video recording using SMPTE timecode. The use case is to record video with music playback tracks. Mac needs to be capable of switching between SMPTE timecode generator and a SMPTE timecode follower.
Wow, this is I will say before we go to Jason, I've been in this business long enough that I remember, hooking tape decks to computers with, RS-422 or whatever. And this feels like something that's very old school. And I will say that quite often the solution is not, I need the thing that I used to do it the same way. But sometimes the solution is show me the new way that people are doing this. Jason?
And along those lines, there is, I believe it's a $300 app called MIDI, MITTI, and it will generate any kind of absolutely any kind of time code you want, or it can read time code. It's not just for playback, and I think that's the only thing within your constraints that'll actually do this.
Any other input? Yeah, Courtney?
Yeah, I'm not sure I don't know if MIDI what will do that. It would have to generate an RS-422 signal to control the tape deck, to synchronize time code. And
I want to know who's
I
still
can't remember
using
the name of the
external video
company that made
recorders.
those synchronizers. Smith somebody.
Wonder if
They're
somebody like
used in a
Tentacle Sync has
decade.
anything that'll do the old style outputs. Because boy, if you've got a deck, an external video recorder, it's probably going to have RS-422 or maybe 232 in. Nothing probably more modern than that.
SMPTE sync.
Tony,
and
I'd be
takes
interested
time
in
to get
knowing.
connectors, yeah.
I'd be interested in knowing what the use case is for old tape decks, or what and music playback, record video with a music playback track. I'm just curious what you're actually doing. Why don't we move? I'm sorry, Marty, then Stuart, and then we'll move on.
So with the older decks, time code was recorded on an audio track,
Mm-hmm.
and then was read by a time code reader that would then control the decks. And but if you're looking for companies that do external time code, I mean, you're not going to find anything that's within that price range. But companies were Lockit Network and Ambient Recording, Brainstorm Electronics, Denicky,
Harita used to make a lot of that stuff.
Harita, Fisher Robotics,
Most
you
of those
know,
are
and a bunch
reader
of others.
but not synchronizers.
But they weren't, I'm not aware that any were adapted to an IP video stream.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard of anybody actually using time code in an IP configuration.
LTC or longitudinal time code used to be, though, you're right, it came out on an audio track and you could literally listen to it with headphones. I do not recommend that. It was an ugly sound. But once you took that audio signal out, if something could understand it, parse
The
it.
live album was much better, though.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
There's actually a website, if you search for it, it's easy to find, where you can type in the time code you want to start at, the frame rate, drop frame, non-drop frame, and it'll export an audio file for you. Marty? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
done.
looking at
I just
Stuart,
I
and
forgot
I
to
said
put it
Marty
down
for some reason. No, Stuart.
Actually, one thing of note before I actually get to the point I was going to make, Bill, you said longitudinal time code. I was always told it was linear time code. So I wonder if that's a difference between like regions and the way names change.
On the other side of the equator, we call it something else.
Yep, but to Tony, I don't know which Mac you're using or how new it is, but perhaps maybe look at one of the older AJA Kona cards, like a Kona 2 or a Kona 3, because I believe they actually have on the breakout box a like time code in and out specifically for LTC.
Yeah, there are some. Chuck?
Well, just for the benefit of YouTube watchers that can't see Mukana, Tony has updated us on his use case. So he's not doing to an old tape deck. He's using an ATEM Sumo 19 recorder, and he's recording a musical with playback for the performer sing. Logic is recording multi-track ISO of the singers. So the time code is needed to ease of sync and post to match. He also updated saying that he is using the Moto MIDI.
Nobody ever worked this hard to sync something for me in post. Just record it.
I just wanted to state that out loud because he did put it in Makana, and some people have posted some links in there that might help. So
then those solutions like Tentacle Sync should be able to inject the time code signal into everything. That would be my first look.
Jason?
I'm pretty sure that if you were to just take Logic and do your own, just have your own actual recording of the LTC, muted, of course, because it will deafen you. I think you can pretty much use anything.
Courtney?
Yeah, I would just pull the LTC signal out of the tape deck that you're playing back from and feed it into one of the unused inputs on Logic and record it as an audio signal, and then send that to editorial, and then you can sync it back up using that as a reference.
And Chuck, one more time.
Well, I think Chris is just saying make your editor earn it.
Let's move on.
Moving on.
Interesting use case, though, Tony. Thanks for the question.
A. Mitchells of Washington, a frequent questioner, says, for those that have been attending sessions during NAMM, the Music Merchants big show, Believe in Music Week, the NAMM Believe in Music Week, what are some of the thoughts on the event? Any sessions you've really enjoyed? Have you, are you excited about any of them? How do you feel about the swap card platform for hosting the event and comparisons to Hopin or other meeting platform? And then he's got a link there for the full NAMM schedule and registration.
So we talked a little bit about Hopin yesterday. Marty.
So I've been following it. I've been visiting a few of the sessions. The things I find most interesting to me are the artist's oral history interviews. Yesterday I saw Bill Bruford from Yes and King Crimson. I saw what's his name? Jack Cassidy from Hot Tuna. I'm looking forward to Ravi Shankar, Eric Whitaker, Imogen Heap, a few others. She's
got a great voice.
Yeah, she's a technology wizard too, an inventor. Yeah. Have you ever seen her, her videos or performances?
Looping stuff.
She invented these gloves that are MIDI interfaces to her computer, to her music computer. And when she moves, each finger, up, down, left, right, twists her wrist. It all does stuff on her computer that makes music. It's
wow,
utterly fascinating.
Jeffrey?
So it's I've been out there. The page itself is pretty formulaic, but yet kind of a little bit business style. So you have different areas, and of course you go into I've been in the brands area because I do one-on-one interviews during NAMM. So I've been just trying to contact everybody there. And there's a messaging system there, and if the companies choose to use it, then you get answers back. But you might not. There's even places where messaging is not there. That's the one problem I have with it, is it's not uniform for everybody. And I think you have to pay for certain areas of certain functions to be activated on your page. And some pages I come up to, I have no idea what they're about, what brands they're about. And as for sessions, I haven't done any sessions yet. But it's overall with CES and with NAMM, they've been very similar when it came to collection of information and meeting up with people, and of course it being all virtual. It's tough.
Yeah, it kind of dawned on me that we've been doing this for so long, just in this group, that I think a lot of stuff seems very second nature to us. In the industry, it seems like the quest is not to improve people's, as Alex likes to say, ball handling skills, but let's make a whole new thing. Like it's almost like if we invent the right wheel, everybody will get on the wagon. Whereas we all have a wagon. Let's just learn how to not fall out of it. If that makes any sense. I don't know if that's a good analogy. It might be ridiculous. Chuck?
Chris, I'm just going to suggest a roll cage.
Okay.
There Chuck? You go. Well, no, one thing I was not concerned, but curious about was with the swap card type thing. It seems like one of the main things that's driving some of these platform innovations is the ability for attendees to quickly have their information gathered by the vendors, because that's overall what these trade shows were for, right? It was for vendors to show off their products and quickly gather leads and be able to follow up with those. And that's why it was so aggressive with people taking your business card and scanning your badge. And I think that trying to make that process easy, remember back in April or May, where you would go to, there was a few tech shows where you'd go into a room and you almost had to type in your info, or you had to type it in at the beginning and then I had one where I would just show up to look at a page and I was immediately sucked into a chat with the salesperson, and I hated that. So I have not attended NAMM yet, but I will be looking at it, A. Mitchell's, to see kind of what that interaction was like. But I'm a horrible judge because I'm very picky. I hate being forced into a sales conversation. I just want to look at your product. I don't want you to pop up and say, "Hey, yeah, how can I help you?" So I don't know. I think that's.
I'll answer to the I'll answer to the attendees part because I'm looking at the page. I'm not going to show the page because it's personal information, but there is a tab called Meet Attendees, which you can go through and you can meet everybody that's part of that. The only problem is if they don't put in their information, it's just a blank page if you go to. However, NAMM has done a good job in actually getting those fields populated for different people. So it might be better. CES was just notoriously blank when it came to people's pictures and information. But NAMM seems to be doing a better job, so I agree on that. I think that's a good point on these conference softwares, is how we also interact with the attendees.
You know, I just wanted to make the note that NAMM is the National Association of Music Merchants. This is a trade industry for people who sell stuff. So the fact that you're going to get hit up about sales should not be surprising, as opposed to something like CES, which is a consumer electronics show. Their focus is, putting product out there, and sure, sales happen, but I think NAMM is particularly focused on merchandising.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is because of a year of COVID, I think people are hungry to sell something. So they're probably getting, marching orders from their bosses, like, get out there and sell stuff, guys. I want to see big numbers. We got to save our business, save our jobs, save our industry, whatever. Guy, then Marty, and then I want to hear from Jan, and we'll move on.
Yeah, and some of the other shows, Stream Geeks put together one which was loosely just based on a Zoom meeting with breakout rooms. And when you got pushed into a room and all of a sudden you're like in the New Tech TriCaster room and the guy demoing the TriCaster is right there asking questions, you're like, whoa, I just got kind of tumbled and thrown in here. And it's a different experience rather than this experience with the NAMM and Swap Card, which I'm hearing that Swap Card is also used on the South by Southwest event. So when that question was asked earlier with an interview that we had on here, that we were wondering what the platform was, it looks like this one's robust enough to be able to handle something of that magnitude of 100,000 people. And so that's why I wanted to bring this up. And if you look at this was one of the oral history ones like Marty was talking about. It's pretty cool that you get this nice organized layout where you can jump from session to session. And what I love about it is just being able to get through it quickly. Like if I want to scrub through something, and figure out if I want to watch it, it's nice to just be able to dig in there. And so, you can, because the schedule is just packed. I mean, there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sessions, and some of them that people here might be
interface when you're scrolling and that thing's bouncing in the corner.
Yeah, some of these might be ones that people from here, even though it's geared towards music merchants, a lot of this stuff like learning Dante, learning about some of the new products, whatever this one is, you can just dive in.
I'm wondering if there's a psychological argument for, whoa, do that again. That was fun.
You want to see that again? I can't do it in slow motion right now.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Stop. You're distracting me. I wonder if there's a psychological advantage to saying this event, and I'm baiting the question, this thing is happening today at 9:00. Be there at 6:40 to get the Discord link, as opposed to saying, here's a link with a whole bunch of things that you can go watch and watch them whenever you want. See, to me, the fact that I know that it is there means I probably won't watch it, because in my mind, I'm going to be trying to, categorize, unless it's something I really have to see. I'm going to be thinking, well, I'll save that till I have a little extra time. And I think that I'd love to see a good, like peer-reviewed study where somebody can empirically show that things that are live will get a better retention rate or engagement rate than something that is video on demand.
You know what? I've been looking at this for a week. I signed up over a week ago, and I'm looking at the schedule like all last week, and I'm picking out the things that I want to see from the schedule. I'm populating my Google Calendar with, reminders that this session is coming up and this interview is coming up, and because I want to see it, And then I started watching them, and for a couple of them, I couldn't come in like right on time, so I'd be like maybe 5 or 10 minutes late. That's fine. I'll join it. But when I started, it's starting at the beginning, and I realized these are all pre-recorded. There is no live. And once it's premiered, anybody can go and watch it at any time. So now I've fallen behind. I haven't seen some of the things that I wanted to see yet. So I know that they're there, and I'll go back and watch them.
Somebody needs to do the empirical study so that we, as people marketing services, can lay it out in front of somebody. I know John and I were talking about this months ago. Lay it out in front of somebody and say, this is more than just my opinion. Here's a study from Harvard or whatever that shows that you have better retention, better engagement, and it'd be nice if I had a third word just from a cadence standpoint, but I don't. I want to hear from Jan.
Okay. First of all, the urgency, I wasn't going to say this, but because you moved the conversation this way, the urgency of now is gone. When it's online like that, the urgency of now is gone, because I keep getting an email reminder and I keep saying snooze, snooze, and I keep wanting to go back to it, but I don't go back to it. But the one thing that I did want to say was NAMM is basically the #1 lobbying agency for going to Congress to get people in the music business, such as Save Our Stages or Music Forward or whatever. They are the #1 lobbying industry or organization of the music industry in total. And the last thing, next to last thing I'll say is that #1 is, if you've never been to NAMM in Anaheim, you don't know what you're missing. There is nothing comparable to going to NAMM. It is a live zoo with what a show.
Yeah,
and music everywhere.
I went once and I was sitting there looking at some mixer or whatever, and all of a sudden this crowd walks by me and I look up and it was Stevie Wonder and he was going to do a thing at some booth. Now, some of those groups that you just mentioned, they're part of the ones that are involved in your Wednesday meetings, correct?
Yes, but NAMM originally was for musical instruments, not professional audio. It just recently combined all of the industries because the other shows fell apart. So basically you got AES, which is really for the high-end people who are more into the electronic side of it, with
that's the Audio Engineering Society, right, Jen?
Yeah, right, or the Audio Engineering Society. And then you have LDI, which is the lighting dimensions, but that encompassed the live touring industry as well. And Infocom used to be around. I don't think Infocom is around anymore. So basically NAMM is where it's at.
And I just want to say that Jan hosts a weekly meeting with musical industry pros. And I'm sure if you sent him a request on Discord, he'd send you an invite to it. I see a few more hands, but we've kind of beat this. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay, and I'm just going to take a note. I think we have 2 more non-second hour questions. That may be enough if they're like the last few when we had good discussions. But moving on to Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois. I ordered the Rode NT1 Studio Kit. Is the USB audio interface clean enough, or should I look at another USB-C interface? And he has a link there to the B&H page.
I believe, who is it? Courtney, you use the Rode. You have your hand up. No, I'm sorry. Greg does, right? No, what's the mic that you use, Greg?
Yeah, hi, Chris. Nice seeing you here today. Yeah, the thing is about the kit. If you're gonna get the kit, the specs on the interface itself look pretty okay, except for not a lot of gain. Only 45 dB worth of gain. And it's bus powered. So I would prefer something that's actually plugged in, but I guess the bus power could be okay too. I would try that first. It could be just fine, because I think the kit would be made, to work together harmoniously, and then you could save yourself from having the extra expense of another interface.
And I saw another hand up. No, Jan.
I'm not familiar with the Rode, but Solid State Logic, SSL, just came out with a new interface. Guy, I think Guy might sell that, right? I don't know if you sell that, but it's on B&H. I'll put a link in. They're having a sale on it right now, but it's called the SSL 2 Plus, and everybody that I know is using it. My people at Sweetwater have told me that it is phenomenal, really super clean. So
now is SSL, is that a good company? Never heard of them. No, I'm kidding.
SSL is
I'm kidding.
well, let's see. It's one of the number one studio console manufacturers,
Yep.
and they've taken their interfaces and put it into a small little tiny box. Bill seems to know
Well,
more about it.
No, I don't know any more about it. I'm actually wondering, because I'm always a little hesitant about USB interfaces in audio stuff. I understand USB has gotten faster and faster. Is the thought of the generic audio professionals here that USB is a viable, as close to real time as we need interface for doing audio work? Marty seems to have a. Marty?
Yeah, most DAWs, digital audio workstations, audio editing, multi-track recording systems are using USB 2 even to interface to computers. So, to interface the computer to a multi-track interface or a full-size mixing console. So
do you think there's no real benefit to moving to like Thunderbolt interfaces or the USB 3 stuff that has much higher bandwidth back and forth?
there would be, because you get that. For the sake of maximum compatibility, most mixing consoles are still using USB 2.0 with the, I forget which number it is, the square USB connector at the mixer end and the type A flat full-size USB connector at the computer end, which is enough to transport 32 channels of audio in both directions.
Leland?
So, I think USB is fine. Although for the Rode thing, I think the Rode interface you could probably do better, and with a different interface that, depending on what you ultimately want to use it for, how many channels, do you want to be able to, how many microphones do you want to be able to plug in? How flexible
part of why I
do you
ask
want
is
the
I think I
interface
know
to
that
be?
things like the universal audio stuff that is more expensive and highly valued for their preamps and stuff tends not to be USB. So I wondered if there was a gulf between those.
Greg?
Just
Yeah, well, I mean, if he's buying this kit, I mean, really, what you can use this for is, doing what we're doing now, improving your online presence, and I think for that, I mean, my God, we have lots of people using a $15 headset mic. So I don't think we should poo-poo it just automatically. I mean, it may not have the specs. I mean, it may not be that good. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of better ones. The SSL for sure. I have an Apogee Duet, and that's USB 3. So I don't know.
Just Chris,
If you're trying to get online, get your microphone online.
Hold on.
Well,
hold on,
the one
please.
thing to watch
Leland.
for, the one thing to watch for when you're using a USB device like that is if you don't get online at the point monitoring with a 1/4 inch or a 3/8 or another jack that you can plug a set of headphones in, you will have a delay issue because you're porting the sound into the DAW and then back out to whatever device you're using to monitor from. So make sure if you're going to use a USB device, you have a way to monitor the source at the source rather than through the loop.
Okay, Marty, you were saying?
I was saying that if your primary purpose for this is audio conferencing like we're doing now, that interface would probably work just fine. Monitoring is important, and depends on whether you want to be able to hear yourself, which requires you're listening directly from the interface, as was just said, rather than looping in and looping out, which will have a delay. But you're generally not hearing yourself. There's not a whole lot of need to hear yourself. You just need to hear the other people online.
The reason I say that, Marty, is because the setup I have here, I have a USB microphone that has no monitoring jack on it. So the only way I can ever listen to myself on the microphone is through voice meter or through the ability on Windows, which you can monitor your sources through the Windows Sound app. But it's just one of those things that I will always have a delay until I find a microphone or another source input that has that monitoring jack for my use.
Well, that's interesting, Leland. Most of the USB microphones I've seen do have a headphone output for that very purpose.
Yep. All right, let's move on. We got 2 more questions to get through in 4 minutes, 3.5 minutes.
Stuart Fairweather of the panel in Melbourne says that since they have both audio and video, what dash cams can the panel recommend? I'm looking for one that will display on an Android tablet that shows maps when moving forward and the rear cam when reversing, and preferably has a wired connection to the rear cam and to the tablet.
Okay, this is so left field. Let's be very focused. Jason.
There's only one that won't make you crazy, and I believe it comes from Garmin.
Garmin, thumbs up. All right, next question. And we'll finish on time.
Yeah, moving on. We're going to get one from Brody Hafner of New York City. My son-in-law is a longtime cell phone and personal electronics analyst for PC Magazine. And he's about to review an Elgato Stream Deck. He wants to know what it's used for. Where would the panel suggest he go for a good cross-section of use case info? It's a little bit like asking, what kind of music can you play on a piano?
Jason, Jeffrey, Leo.
I would say Elgato has a lot of use cases. They actually, walk you through all of their kind of vanilla use cases. And then after that, I would look directly at companion.io.
He wants to know what it's used for. Jason?
Yeah,
or Jeffrey?
I put it into the Makana Contact Me. That's simple as that. It started out as a deck for gaming. It's a hotkey editor is bottom line. So anything that can do a hotkey, it'll do that for that. So just contact me and I will give you every use case that I can think of. We can go over and spend a couple hours with it.
And it's got a bunch of little TVs in it. Jan?
There's nobody better than Jeffrey Powers to give you the answer, but you could probably watch his video on YouTube. I would just go to YouTube and type in Elgato Stream Deck, and then I'll bet there's 1,000 videos so you can watch.
Leo, then Chuck?
Taking that forward, it literally can be used for anything and everything. And it's a far, far better implementation than Apple tried with their keys that go across the top. It's used for everything.
And it's got a bunch of little TVs in it.
Well, no, it doesn't. It has one. That's the important thing, Chris. It's actually only one screen behind there.
Come on. It sounded better the way I described it.
It does, but it's one screen, so you can actually put anything on it at any time, including I've got live displays showing up of my screens from eCam.
Okay.
Yeah,
Chuck?
they're little. It's actually, if you can just about make it out, they are little live video captures of what my eCam is running as.
Okay, Chuck, then Courtney.
Yeah, I have the ABC Mini and everything, and this is just a cool USB remote. And partnering with Stream Deck is adding new functionality all the time. But with the BitFocus Companion, it just opens up complete control of anything I want to do immediately at the touch of a button. So I can switch my cameras, my background, everything. I'm controlling the ATEM Mini right from where I'm sitting, and the ATEM Mini is off to my right, and I can't even reach it. So.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest he show up tomorrow on the second hour because Aaron Parecki does a lot of stuff with Stream Deck and controlling ATEM Minis with it. So he can ask live questions there, and I'm sure Aaron could answer most of them.
Let's go to the last question.
Moving on, last question for today in the general pod is from Andrew Moyer of Oakville, Ontario, Canada. Keynote PowerPoint don't seem to allow slide control while in the background. Looking for an alternative using OBS with scenes into Zoom for a music session. The instructor wants to show lyrics and or chords for the songs she is singing using Companion to select scenes and change slides, and they're running on one computer only.
Yeah, I will say this because I tend to approach things with as simple of a solution as possible. The one computer thing is an issue. Keynote recently added the ability to play in a window. which is kind of cool. It used to, you used to have to take over your whole screen. Now it will play a slide deck in a window. But even and I say that because I'm not super advanced when it comes to all the networking tricks that people do. Even I was able, with some help from Mr. Preto, to figure out how to put Keynote on my laptop, second computer. I apologize, I'm going off of your question. And then NDI out into my switcher. So it, at least with the Keynote PowerPoint sort of answer, a second machine might really save you a lot of headaches. Leo, and then Bill.
So even better, Keynote natively supports your iPhone as your switcher. It's
controller.
Absolute, completely brilliant.
But will it work if it's not the active app?
You just have to have. I can't tell you that.
Yes,
you literally
the
you
answer
go
is
in.
yes.
Okay,
It's brilliant. It's just absolutely brilliant. You get your slides. You can do everything. You go backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. You can walk around the room. You can look at your slides. You do everything. It just does
cool.
it.
Courtney?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You can use an iPhone or you can use a presentation controller, because most presentation controllers have drivers that have universal hotkeys for driving PowerPoint and Keynote, so that wireless presentation controller should control it, whether it's foreground or background.
Leo, do you have more to say?
Yeah, I do. Sorry, very quickly. There is a completely different answer to this, which is with the Google Slides. There's a remote control feature with Google Slides. What you can actually do is you can have your Google Slides up, and somebody the other side of the world can control your slides. And when you think about that, you literally give them this. I do this a lot on broadcasts.
You can
and
do
they
that
literally
with Keynote
control
Live also.
I don't know if you can do it with Keynote, but I know you can do it with Google Slides.
Chuck?
And if you have to use PowerPoint, there's a software, it's free, called Internet Clicker. And Internet Clicker will do the same thing. You can load it up on your phone, tablet, or give someone else control. We've had someone in New York driving slides in California.
All right, first hour's over. We're going to move on to the second hour. We're talking about audio stuff here. There's only a few questions. If you have questions, now's a good time to post them. We're going to have a very casual conversation here because we only have about 3 or 4 questions. Bill.
Our first question, put in a little while ago, was from Jonas Dotel of Reutlingen, Germany, who says, what is a good starting point for a compressor for the stream mix or in the mix? Where do you start when you throw in a compressor?
Jason.
Are you talking about like the settings where your dials should be? I guess I don't fully understand that. Or are you asking for like a rack compressor, like a product?
I wonder, it can be interpreted both ways. Where do you insert a compressor in your audio chain? Could be one interpretation. And the other one is, what are your startup settings when you throw in a compressor? I do know that sometimes I always, when I throw in Final Cut, when I throw the Apple compressor audio plugin, I always listen to it with what the designer thought would be a good starting place, just to see how much does it meet what I'm looking for. And then you can tune to taste from there. But it's like saying, if the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of pepper, I'm not going to automatically go to 4. I'm going to start with 2, and then the next time I do it, maybe I have to cut back.
Greg?
Yeah, I kind of think it depends on what exactly you're doing. If this is a stream with just dialogue, then you could there's no problem compressing a little bit at the end. He wants settings. I don't know. I would probably do a 2-to-1 ratio. I don't know, threshold maybe 10 or 12 dB below your peaks, and it's kind of a medium short attack and a little medium longer release.
I want some reverb on my compressor. I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Now the other thing is, though, if your stream includes music and all kinds of other things, you may not want to compress the whole program. So I think you have to decide, what it is that you're trying to do.
Leo, then Marty.
I feel very embarrassed to answer a question after Greg in terms of audio, but what I would say,
but here I go.
But I'm going to do it anyway. But from a perspective of houses of worship, we find that adding it in at either vMix can add it in, or we can add it in directly as it's coming out of the mixer and in. And we have to do it because a lot of them are now running almost unmanaged, and the volumes of everything are all going all over the place. And so just adding a compressor at the end of that chain has made a big difference. The thing I would add, though, is just be aware that quite a lot of this software, the broadcast platforms like this, I don't know if I'd be interested to know if Zoom adds a compressor. It does definitely do something. So I wonder if it is actually adding a compressor into matching all the audio levels.
I will say that I took a tour of the audio streaming setup for one of the local churches in our hometown, and they actually treat the speaker, the pastor, completely separately from the music, and they had some plugin in Waves where it optimized him up, for both for the room but also for their broadcast. And then, the music got treated separately. So that might be something to think about, Jason.
Yeah, so first, a compressor is a Leatherman, okay? It's not like a flathead screwdriver. It can be used for so many things, okay?
That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
This is kind of crazy, but sure. I mean, if you want to start somewhere, I'd say threshold at, I don't know, maybe 35 below, 2-to-1 ratio, attack at 1.4, hold at 0, and release at 93.
I would also say this, before we get to you, Marty, that Preto's holding up his Leatherman. I will also say that, and I say this from experience, and this is a personal confessional. A lot of times in this business, we hear things. We hear people talking about compression on their audio or color grading their video or, whatever. And we hear these words, and this kind of is sort of thematic because we were talking about earlier in the show about the best way to learn is to listen and absorb. But sometimes we listen, we absorb, and then we jump into something before we either A, really need to, or B, really understand it. And I will tell you, full confession, you can really screw something up with a compressor. And so if you don't know what you're doing, and Jonas, thanks for asking the question. If you don't know what you're doing, be really careful. And A, B it, have other people listen to it. You may be better off. I will say this: you're better off not using it if you don't know how to use it. So just be careful. And a lot of times we just want to jump in. Like, I hear everybody talking about compressors. I went out and bought a compressor, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I just screwed everything up. Bill?
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I started fiddling with my photos with Luminar in its kind of first iteration, I remember being surprised because every time I applied effect, it was way too much. And so I was constantly pulling things back. And after a while, I started realizing things were looking better because I had attacked it that way. Instead of adding stuff, because you tend to overshoot a little bit, if it started bad and I brought it back, I ended up using less. And I think compression is one of those things where a lot of audio things, less is truly more. However you get to there, and by the way, Luminar took that out of the software in one of their revs, and I miss it now. But tastefulness and not adding too much spice to the meal is sometimes the way to get very much more palatable food.
Marty, and then we'll move on.
So I was just working with someone on one of the church audio Facebook groups who posted a link to a service, and they're saying, I'm just not happy with the vocals. How can I improve them? What comments can you make? And so I listened, and it was a rock band and several vocalists, lead and backups, and at first listen, it wasn't bad. But then I noticed that it was highly compressed. All the vocals sounded crunchy is how I would describe it. And I'm trying to figure out why. and it was because it is highly compressed. There's no dynamic range. The drums were too loud. And so there was no air, no breath, no space, right? And so I advised them to back off on the bus compressor. When you have more dynamic range, you have kind of layers that you can work with to put a band underneath and a backup vocal and then a lead vocal on top of that. But when you're compressing so much that everything is in one sonic space, it's all like a pancake. But I also want to kind of address the question itself there, and the answer, what settings is a good starting point? Well, everybody together, it depends. Because there are different kinds of compressors. Even the electronic version, emulations of hardware compressors, they react differently. The attacks are different. The way they sense audio is different. And so, the settings on one type of compressor will not sound the same on a different kind of compressor. It also depends on the material that you're compressing. So if it's the sermon with just speech, the settings will be different than a full mix of a band. And it also depends on what you're using the compressor for. What is the goal?
Yep.
What is the outcome that you're trying to adjust for?
Okay. Let's move on. Next question, Bill.
Moving on to David Brady in New York, who says, using the Win 10 Xbox screen recorder to scrape zooms, the resulting file's audio is a few frames behind the video. What's the best way to correct?
I think the main question is correct in post or correct live? Jason.
Use a much faster hard drive and free up some space on that Xbox. That is almost always the issue.
Okay. Asked and answered. Chuck, sorry.
Well, he's saying he's screen scraping and the audio is a few frames behind the video. If you're screen scraping, wouldn't it normally be the other way around? Wouldn't the audio normally be behind?
Well, possibly. You could be misspeaking, but I will tell you, when we do screen scrapes with audio, by default, we open it up and push the audio to the right, usually about 5 frames.
Right.
Yeah, delaying it.
So it may have to use a delay on the audio. And so when you're screen scraping, you may have to, however you're getting the audio into that stream, you may have to delay that somehow. That's one of the things we don't like about the ATEM Mini is you can only do up to 9 frames, which you shouldn't really need more than, but it's not very minute on adjustments.
So the Xbox has its own screen recorder?
Windows built it in.
Okay. Greg, then Bill.
Okay. First of all, you have to be sure that, that in his case, that audio is actually behind video. That's kind of an odd thing. So double check that. And I don't know how to correct that in live at all.
Right. Guy?
Yeah, PhotoJoseph has these tests on. Oh, great! PhotoJoseph has these tests where you could see if you take a snapshot as to how many frames that you're off. You just take a still and then toss it left or right, whichever way you're off. So that could be helpful. It's photojoseph.com and just type in delay, and then when you take a screenshot, you'll be able to see exactly how far you are off.
Very cool.
Yep.
Leland, then Bill, then we'll move on. Leland, you're very quiet.
Probably am, because I was double muted. Sorry about that. The question I always ask people when their audio is trailing like that is, are you listening through a Bluetooth device? If you are, there's a likelihood you'll get a lag in the audio feed behind the video if you're monitoring it that way. So always check that.
And Bill.
Since he says the resulting files audio is all, he's not trying to do it live. So the answer is throw it in a good nonlinear editor. You will be able to see the frames and you will be able to see the audio waveforms, and you can nudge them one way or another until they line up better and then export the thing fixed.
Yep. One of the things that we do is we'll just in Final Cut never mind, we'll move on. Next topic, next question.
James Babbitt of San Diego said, is there a small adapter like the TechRise for the Countryman mic? The mic needs phantom power and has either a Sennheiser or XLR connector.
Marty.
Well, first, let's make the distinction between a Sennheiser connector and an XLR connector. If the mic has an XLR connector, it would need phantom power, which would be 48 volts. If it has a connector for any wireless microphone, then it is looking for bias power, which is not the same thing. Bias power, depending on the transmitter would supply either 3 to 5 volts, generally, but the Countryman mic in particular is looking for 1 to 2 volts. And so that makes it kind of incompatible. The connector for the Countryman microphone actually has a resistor built into it to drop the voltage down. But there's that difference between bias voltage for a...
What were you showing, Jason?
Condenser mic and an XLR.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the connector you're talking about. And the Sennheiser one is the one that screws on?
Yeah, this is the Sennheiser.
Okay. Courtney?
There is an exception to that, Marty, is there are some mini plug or micro dot 2 XLR adapters that have batteries in them for electret condensers. So make sure it doesn't have a battery in it. And if it has a battery in it, you don't want to supply it with 48 volt phantom. You just plug it into a regular
well,
actually balanced input.
Actually, so that XLR adapter converts the phantom power to bias power. So it drops it down to the 1 to 5 volts that the microphone needs. Some of those have batteries in them, and you can have phantom power to it. The phantom power gets blocked.
Right.
Bill?
If you just need to generate phantom power and you don't have a source of it anywhere, this guy XVive will take 12 volts from, it's a rechargeable thing. You can plug it into USB, charge it up, and then for 3 or 4 hours, it will provide phantom power if you don't have any other source of it.
All right. And
what's the price point on that? And did you put it in a link in Makana, please?
I will. Let's see. I think it's about $30, something like that. Let me see if I'm right. Oh, it's currently unavailable on Amazon. It's the XVive. You have to go looking for it. I guess a lot of people are trying to do this. If I recall correctly, because I bought one to have it around not too long ago, I think like $24, $29, something like that.
I was going to say 35, but I was totally guessing.
You might have been right. You might be more right. I'll look it up.
And the next contestant.
Alex, I'm going to guess 34. Next question.
Moving on question-wise, and let me get to my interface here. George Saidi, I believe, I hope I'm not mispronouncing your last name, from Webster Groves, says, is there a way to pass MIDI from an M Audio USB keyboard on my iMac through a Scarlett 18i8 connected via MIDI in-out to a hardware synth without creating an instrument track in a DAW? No MIDI out, DIN on the keyboard. So he's trying to do a little adapting here.
I don't know that we have somebody that's deep enough into the music space for this.
Yeah, our MIDI folks are not really.
Jason?
All right. So first, it's really going to depend. Yes, there is a way to do it. What you can do is go into advanced audio, and Apple, I believe, for years and years has loaded USB, which is just basically going to carry MIDI over USB. So yeah, I see no reason why you couldn't just make a custom audio device that has both USB and then MIDI out, and then your MIDI out would be virtual through your sound card.
Is that like creating an aggregate sound device?
Yes, very similar.
Yeah. So if you search for the word MIDI, you're going to get a thing called audio MIDI setup. And in there you can create, Apple calls it an aggregate sound device, where you can gang things together. It's actually much of the same functionality of what we do in Loopback. But for some reason, Loopback works better for certain things. But I think that's what Jason is referring to. Cool. All right. I hope that helps, George. Sky Gleason has a question, Bill. Let's hear that one.
He does. He's from Seattle and the panel, constantly and wonderfully. MixPre 3 101 question and use case. Mickey set it up and I've used it for 3 months. I'd like to use it in my Mad in This Kitchen show, but I'm afraid to break what I have. I need a refresher on MixPre 3 and Mickey's audio buttons magic. Wow.
Can I tell you from experience, Sky? I would just buy another one for Mad in the Kitchen. I mean, I will say about the MixPre, I love this device. It's definitely one of those buy once, cry once things. It was a lot of money. The plug-in was a lot of money. I love it though. And except for when it comes up as a question on the show, I never think about the price. However, if you're used to sitting at large audio consoles, and I used to sit at very large audio desks, this very straightforward, these buses go in or these channels come in and these buses go out. It's an extremely deep and extremely powerful thing with a marginal user interface. I feel your pain in this question. I would literally just buy another one. Say, Madeline, we got to buy one of these. Greg, then Guy, and Bill.
Chris, even compared to like the Sound Devices 302, which is a standard analog mixer, the MixPre is so deep in the menus.
Yeah.
It's very confusing. And so it's probably not for first time mixers, but
I would agree.
Sky, if you read the manual, it tells you how to do it.
Thanks, Greg.
I know. I'm sorry, bro, but I'm just saying.
I will
and
also
the other thing
say,
is, I think you can take a snapshot of your settings.
Oh, really?
On this, and you can come back to them. I think so.
Well,
I bet you that's in the manual.
I believe there are locking settings, and I think this one is actually called the Guy Cochran setting.
Yeah, can't you just back them up and restore them like anything else?
I would think so.
Don't say the word just. You don't get to say the word just in my room. No.
Here,
no.
I'll research it and come back.
Guy.
Yeah, you can load the settings, and like I have a church thing that I do on Sundays, and I'm constantly shuffling back and forth, but sometimes you get back and you miss a setting and it can screw up your show. So I would say get a second one if you can, and we actually have a bunch of refurb sound devices, MixPre 3Ms, which were the musical ones. Peter Sargent, he's not on here, but he just picked one up, and we got them for cheap. I mean, like totally, it would surprise you. So come on in, Sky. I'll be in the office today. Pick one of those up. You can borrow it and kick it around and see if you like it.
Marty.
Cool. Thanks, sir. Well, this one's from your shop too, so you be good to me.
Marty.
You might also consider the MixPre is a great product, no doubt. Its main benefit is that it's portable and battery operated, so it's great for like ENG people who are constantly on the move and recording while they're on the move. But for what you're doing, Sky, I might consider an actual little mixer, something with faders on it and buses that you can plug several different microphones into. For instance, if you wanted to mount a microphone somewhere on the set to pick up the sound of Mad cooking on the tabletop, you could do that, and you could have a little mixer that's a few $100s and have 4 or 5 microphone inputs that you could do more with.
I can give you my use case. I mean, with Madeline speaking, we're going to be on. By the way, we're going to be on the Today Show this Thursday.
All right.
For a second time, they wanted us back.
Wow.
But we'll be using FaceTime on an iPhone with earbuds because that's what NBC 30 Rock wants to be sure and safe with. So to that point, we have other events that are coming up. We're going to be doing on Zoom, and we're doing more than just a single person talking to a camera, Madeline. But I love the idea of having the sizzling on the thing and the thing. But we're going to start having music coming in live over in the corner. We're going to having a second person 6 feet distanced. And so I need more than a single use. Now I've got a 16-channel Mackie mixer from the good old days of editorial.
You live in Seattle.
No, well, yes. And because I grew up in the industry in Los Angeles, and that was the standard kit that went out.
1604.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Except that it doesn't have a USB interface. So,
No.
I mean,
don't need
you could use that,
why do I
go
need a
into the
USB?
MixPre to interface to your Zoom computer.
Keep going. We'll talk. But anyway,
Okay.
that was
Yeah.
Jan.
I'm moving from one person to multiple sources needing to get into a
Yeah.
single output.
Let's move to Jan Landy.
It's interesting, Sky, that you're using a Mackie as well as the MixPre. See, the MixPre, I look at it is a professional unit. I mean, that you can't get any more professional than having a MixPre. And so when you get into professional, it's all component parts, and you get deep into the weeds with it. And if you don't know what you're doing, you know, it's a problem. That's why I always say, keep it simple, stupid. You know, the simple you can get it. Because if you're doing something on an iPhone, you can't even use that Mix 3. But it's the best piece of equipment in its market space that there is. And it is professional quality, for sure.
It's a good box. Stuart, and then Bill, and then we'll move on. I'm
For
sorry,
those
Courtney.
using
Courtney
the-
also.
It's only money.
Okay, for those using the MixPre 3.2, which is the one that's available in the stores now, it actually says backup to USB drive is available. I haven't been able to find that on the MixPre 3 original. So I'd assume that if it's got the USB connection, it probably also will allow you to back up. And Sky, I'm sorry, but those broadcasters are not up to office hours standards.
Courtney, then Bill.
Yeah, it'll back up to USB connected, but you can't use it as a USB interface at the same time, I don't believe. Curtis Judd has, as far as instructional tutorials, I put a link in Makana there. He
Curtis
has
has good stuff.
Setup and use of the MixPre 3 and 6, and you can take a look at that. And he runs you through all the basics of how to set it up and what each thing does.
Bill, do you have anything to add?
Just a real quick one, just to help Sky with that problem of Mickey walked me through the whole thing. Whenever I'm on a kind of a tech support thing with somebody and I'm learning tons and I know I'm over my head, I always just say, I'm going to grab notes. Is that okay? And then I typically take my phone and just put it on a recorder and let it record the rest of the conversation, because I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten and needed to go back and refresh my memory of a complex process that somebody thankfully walked me through.
To be clear, Mickey did not walk me through. I was this little neophyte back here. Mickey's way out in front. He's pushing buttons. He's physically managing my screen from Manila. And we did a Zoom thing or a control screen thing, and magic happened.
He was probably tired and just wanted to get it over with. Here, let me do
it
this.
really did.
Okay, I'm going to bed. Click.
I want to learn this. Yeah, well, we'll do it for 5 minutes, and then can you share your screen? Done.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting phenomenon of getting into a piece of equipment that's a little over your head. And I will clearly say it's definitely over my head. Next question, Bill.
Patrick Shonez of Little Rock, Arkansas is in with dealing with WLM. One of my audio engineers at work insists on -14 LUFS, since that is the quote YouTube Spotify standard. Office Hours seems to shoot for -24 LUFS. Why 24 versus 14? I started an audio on analog without the cute little screens and plugins.
Greg, then Stuart.
Well, here on Office Hours, we just don't like the sound of -14. It doesn't sound good. -24 has a ring to it. So it's more of an aesthetic. No, I'm just kidding. He's correct about the -14 being the web standard. -24 is the broadcast standard.
I think a lot of it has to do with what you can do in post and what you can do live. And what we found, we used to run at -20. And what we found was that a lot of people had a hard time getting a consistent feed up at -20. And there's some people with some really nice gear in this room. And so -24, it makes perfect sense that 24 is a broadcast standard as opposed to, you know, post-produced. Stuart, then Bill.
-24 gives us a lot more headroom, so you can be as enthusiastic as you like and not blow people's eardrums out. But I would like to point out one thing, which is possibly a problem with the audio engineer. YouTube is not a standards organization. They are a corporate, but they are a corporate body. They do things their own way. Just like Netflix has standards as to what cameras they want to use, YouTube has standards as to what frame rates they want to use and what audio inputs, and those are about their compression engine working at its most efficient settings.
When you
They're
get big enough, you can kind of become your own standard, though. Bill?
Well, I will just say from personal use, if I send in a spot that is designed for broadcast that is at -14, I will get a lovely automated reply going, we're not putting your spot on the air, period. Fix it. I will not get that from any YouTube delivery. So one is exactly as you're saying, standards, and the -24 will toss your spot out, even if you're paying them to run it for like an NBC owned and operated thing. So you understand there's two standards and they're both extremely important.
Mr. Kurta?
Okay, just one more thing. Well, two more things. If you stick with the -24 and you go back to the old way that you used to know it, okay, it's roughly equivalent to true peaks at -6. Okay, and I think, you know, so many people do that, so that just kind of works out to somewhere around between 20 and 24. The other thing is that if you're using this for music, I mean, they have LUFS levels at as high as -2 or -3.
Wow.
You know, so it you know, it depends on what format you're working in too.
Sky?
The sieve that you're trying to shove something through is going to keep things from coming across. So consequently, the FCC used to be a very tight sieve, and engineer standards were created because of the technical issues. You didn't do a lot of white because it would make the TVs buzz. You didn't do a lot of things because it would make the audio buzz. But now that we've gone to an internet commercial-based, and without the FCC or MPAA or any of these other sieves or screens to shove content through, now it's up to us to decide what is acceptable, and so it's becoming more community based. So to Greg's point, I don't know, it depends.
I bet Marty has something to say about this.
Yeah, well, so online streaming has many different standards for what level should be, and it's entirely dependent on the carrier. I have, let's see if I can get this to work here. Yeah. Let me look at this, if we can pop this up. So, no, that's
it's
not
showing.
what I'm supposed to be looking at.
But you have to be talking.
Oh, well, so if you look at, so there's a popular meter called the Julian loudness meter. And if you look it up in their documentation, they have a recommendations table, and they have a list of all of the streaming and broken down by carrier, by type. So there's film, TV and gaming, and online streaming and other things. And it lists all of them and shows what specs.
Yeah, go ahead and show
they
that
have
screen.
set
Go
for
ahead and show that
themselves.
screen again. I'll pin it. Go ahead.
You know, it's not showing the right part of the screen. I'm sorry, I haven't had that, but I'll put the link in Mukana, and you can see what all of the different specs
Stuart
are for
has it
all the
up now.
different carriers.
I already put the link in Mukana for this page, which is the recommendations table. So there's all that information there on the Ulean website. And a discussion about why it's done that way. So yeah, that link is in the Mukana chat.
I want my record to be louder. Make my record louder. Can we make my record louder?
Make the
Mr.
logo bigger is the often comment from the CEO. Yeah.
Greg,
Listen,
who was the
ancient-
famous mastering engineer in the 80s? Was it?
He died in jail a couple of days ago.
Oh, Phil Spector, he was not a
No,
master.
he's a producer.
George
He's a producer.
Massenburg was one.
There
Who
was,
else?
There was a mastering engineer in LA, like a super big name. I can't remember his name. Like literally just did the last. Jan, do you know? You may know the guy.
I do know his. I'm trying to remember his name, but
The only one I
do
remember
know who
was,
he is.
was George Massenburg.
I'm talking about
George
like
Massenburg was
like
one of
the
George
like
Massenburg?
the Bob Clearmountain level, that kind of level.
Yeah, up there.
No.
Well, Massenburg was at that level.
It might be Massenburg is who I'm thinking of. Anyway, let's move on. Next question.
Okay, moving on to Shane MC.
I think it was Massenburg, actually.
Coming from DSM, wherever that is. Has anyone in the panel used or can discuss the Shure Diversity ShowLink access point, AD610, and Axient Spectrum Manager AXT600?
Go, Marty. And then
The ShowLink is Shure's method of communicating back to each of the wireless microphone transmitters and able to control them. So from your mixing desk or your production console, you can change a transmitter's level, you can change the transmitter's RF frequency, and do various other things. So that's one of the issues that has always, come up with wireless microphones is you could do a sound check, and adjust the transmitter pack's level. But then during the show, as people get, excited, they talk louder. And if the transmitter starts clipping, you have no way of actually turning it down. While that person is talking, you'd have to go out on stage, access the pack physically with your hands and turn it down, which of course is not, not really doable. So you have to deal with it. Well, so Shure developed this method of actually controlling the transmitter remotely. And it uses 2.4 gigahertz on a Wi-Fi spectrum, but it's not actually Wi-Fi. The access point, it's a physical device that you connect to the receivers that are in your rack, and it creates that link to the transmitters. It actually works quite well.
Mr. Kurta, and then Courtney.
And then I was going to address the Axient Spectrum Manager. And basically what that does is it scans frequencies for the strongest stuff available. And you know all you guys in crowded urban areas know the fight for any kind of frequency. With the high def TV stations taking up 3 normal stations worth of bandwidth, maybe more even now. I don't know. Frequencies are at a premium, and if you get a large show with a bunch of different mics, you have to carefully coordinate those frequencies so you don't get any comb filtering or stuff like that.
Jan, did you have your hand up?
He did.
Bernie Grunman.
That's the name.
Bernie Grunman.
Yes.
He mastered everybody.
Yeah,
every record.
He was
Bernie
he was
Grunman.
huge back then.
Just a quick thing.
Yeah.
When I was the director of A&R for a record label RSO, Bernie, we would send the tapes to Bernie, and then he would master it, and then he would send me what they called a mother, and I would have to listen to it to make sure that there were no cracks or pops. And one of the hardest jobs I ever had was listening to the Star Wars soundtrack. And that would put me to sleep while I was listening to it. And I was there having to do quality control.
QC, yeah. That's fun. Fun story. Next question. No, I'm sorry. I skipped over Courtney.
I was just going to point out that ShowLink only works with ADX and AXT, Axient wireless modules. None of the other Shure, the earlier versions of Shure analog transmitters and receivers will work with that ShowLink.
I have a friend of mine, audio engineer Stan, and we used to do shows in Vegas all the time, like back in the late 90s. And he would show up. The first thing he'd do is he'd open up his wireless rack, pull all the transmitters out, the belt packs, clip them to a cardboard box, put the cardboard box up on top of his rack, turn them on, and just squash everybody around us to like kind of, you know, elbow in his frequencies. And this is before things got more civil. Anyway, next question.
Charles Klein in New York City says, second hour audio 101, acknowledging that a 10 by 10 by 12 is not an ideal dimension for an audio room, basically. Where would the panel place a 2 by 1 audio system?
2.1.
So stereo with, 2.1 stereo with a sub. In particular, the subwoofer. The room is carpeted with some acoustic panels. How far from the walls would should the monitors be?
Jason?
Always fun.
It's going to depend very heavily on how reflective your ceiling is. I would start with bass traps. I would not worry too much about the fronts until you've tamed the bass. So that's my thought on it. Anyone else?
No, I agree with that 100%. You're in that small, a square-ish cube thing, bass is going to build up super fast. And so especially if you're running a sub, if you don't have tight bass, everything's going to get floofy.
Greg?
Yeah, you need to be a reasonable distance away from any walls. The sub, I think, is like should be like a foot and a half, maybe 2 feet from the back, from the back wall, and then the I'm sure there's these triangulation formulas that you can get about how far the listener should be actually from the speakers. So you could do that.
Excuse me, you would put the sub against the back wall behind you?
Sub's kind of on.
Well, no, when I think back wall, I think behind the screen and the console where I'm looking.
Okay.
So sorry, my error.
No.
But it could be any wall. It doesn't matter. But you're always standing. You always got the risk of. I hope it's not 10 feet by 10 feet by 12 feet high.
I think that's what the 12 means. I think Charles means.
Well, that's what it. Yeah, I think that's going to be a kind of a problem. But
you may consider, instead of setting everything up on a horizontal plane, of laying on your back on the floor and then put everything on the ceiling.
Oh!
And you'll get an extra 2 feet of space.
The other thing you could do, Chris, is you could hang those speakers.
Yeah.
Okay, like we used to do in the old days. That's possible.
Marty, then Jan.
With those dimensions, you're going to get a wicked resonant mode. There's going to be one frequency, two frequencies that, especially in the lower frequencies, that correspond with that wavelength to 10 feet and 12 feet that are just going to be popped out, and that's why people are recommending bass traps, because you're really going to need it. In terms of positioning, if you're dealing with just a home theater listening space, there's the 60-degree triangle where the speakers are in the two corners, left and right, and the sweet spot is in the third point. That's the ideal mathematical listening space. I don't personally subscribe to that. I like my speakers a little bit wider. But the subwoofer should be in the center on the same plane as the left and right speakers. So for timing purposes, you want to hear the subwoofer at the same time as your left and right speakers. So I would have, let's say if the left and right speakers are 3 feet out from each of the corners, I would have the subwoofer 3 feet out from the wall as well.
Yep. Jan, Greg, Stuart, Bill.
If you really want to get precise, there's a software called Smart, and then you will be able to map your room, and you will be able to it'll tell you where you need to put everything. It's a little expensive, but if you want to do it right, Smart is the way to go.
Way to do it. Greg?
I was going to say one more thing that's going to affect your sound greatly is a thing called a crossover, which is at what frequency does the sound cross over from your main speakers to the sub, and that can make a whole world of difference in the way your system sounds just by tuning that crossover just till, I mean, ultimately it's what does it sound like? Do you like it? Does it sound good to you? That's what you're going to go for.
I'm also curious if Charles is talking about setting up like a theater, or is this a workspace for mixing audio? Just out of curiosity.
He just stated he's going to be color grading. So this is for him to set up a color grading station.
Dude, you don't need audio for color grading. You're just going to be listening to Enya music.
What do you have, synesthesia? Like, are you seeing like the bass?
I've never met a colorist that listens to the audio from the piece. Never. Never. They're listening to music and just chilling while they're making pictures look good. Stuart. Color grading. Okay, hang on. I'm going to come back to that. Firstly, we're assuming that when Charles says 10 by 10 by 12, that he's talking feet and not meters, because it is a completely different size system for that. And it would be a very large screen for color grading in a 10 by 10 by 12 but it would give you the sort of sound you would have when you're mixing audio for a cinema experience and whatever. But the other thing about metric is, just a rough rule of thumb for people, is that the width of the room multiplied by the length of the room, the number it gives you is roughly the amount of watts you need to fill that room with sound. So something that's going to be say we'd say 10 by 10, so what, about 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters, you do not need a big power system. Now, just
so
on the color grading, yes, and just on the color grading, that is my speaker for when I'm color grading. A little cheap wooden thing with a paper cone of all things. All right, when you are color grading, you do not need decent sound. That is more than enough. Yeah, I've never met a colorist who even bothers listening to the program material.
Here's my speaker for color grading, like right here. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Black. Not your best transition, Jason. Oh, I gotcha.
Now hold on. We've met Charles, and Charles is we've seen his setup. He's the one with the
he's got a nice setup. Yeah,
that's awesome. And I'm wondering if just some smaller studio monitors on those little pole stands. Greg, you had mentioned hanging them, but you know, those single poles. So that's
what we have
probably
in our 2 edit suites at the office. Yeah,
correct. And then maybe just the subwoofer down underneath that desk that you have, that beautiful hardwood desk that you showed us, Charles. So I agree with the man. He wants to get the subtle cues from the audio master to see.
It's just rare. It's just rare that any picture anything would want to make the sound so good that it might affect their working with the picture. I don't know.
And good on you, Charles, for wanting to hear it right. You can't color it if you can't hear it.
You
got to get the colors right.
I just get a decent like a Vizio 2.1 sound bar and put it under the screen and throw the subwoofer anywhere.
Just ask Beethoven towards the end of his life. It's all about the vision.
I know people who hear music
Marty, please.
in colors.
Marty, please.
Sorry.
Sky.
So yes, if you're going to be, your final product is in a large theater, you want to hear what it sounds like. Skywalker Ranch, they have how many dozens of those sound stages that are full-blown theaters. So you want to be in the 40-foot experience because it's a different visual. Now, to Charles's point, if he's wanting to feel and hear, you want to find that final experience, then yeah, you need a bigger size, etc. But if mostly what you're producing is something that's going to be consumed on a 16-inch or a 6-inch monitor, or even an 80-inch monitor, I think what would be a best case for the best audio for an 80-inch for when that goes into a full 5.1 surround experience in somebody's home?
Bill?
First and foremost, do some research on what are called standing waves. A 10 by 10 room with a subwoofer is going to be a bit of a nightmare regardless. And in fact, I would probably put a power switch on the subwoofer. And I think when I was doing coloring, I'd probably have it turned off most of the time. Maybe he just wants to also be able to kick back and watch something and have fun with that. But I'm not sure if you have good near field monitors that do a decent low end, you may never need to turn it on. That would be my 2 cents. The other thing is just in terms of prepping the room, make sure that, I have, that's what's over the top of my head right now, which are some sound panels on auto pulls, just to kill the slap back from the ceiling, because people don't treat ceilings very much, and it can make a world of difference. It won't make things perfect, but you got to look at all the surfaces that are reflecting back to you and do the best you can.
Bill, do you have another camera that has a closer view of that fan?
No, I don't. That's the
Oh,
only one I've
shame.
got. You've got that, and that is alone.
It gives you the
Sorry.
Leslie effect for the
Yeah.
sound.
And even that, my
let's go
shot
to
isn't
the last
straight. I have
question.
to figure out.
I'm teasing you. Last question.
That's the last question. That's right. We got down to the final one, and my mouse is in the wrong place here. Okay. Michael Paley of New York Metro says, if you're using the WLM plugin for live monitoring only, are there simpler programs that can be used on Macintosh or Windows instead of the full-featured DAWs? On Mac, currently using GarageBand, but this doesn't seem very convenient or elegant for such a dedicated task.
So the question is, what are some alternate hosts to run the WLM meter? Leo had his hand up, and then Jason, then Leland.
Sound Source. It goes straight into Sound Source, and if you're going to do anything on your PC, on your Mac, there's Mac based. Sound Source is so easy to control all of your audio everywhere, and you can plug them all in and you can put them against. So I can run the meter against any program, pin it, and show it up, and use the other plugins.
And Sound Source is like an audio routing app.
It's a host.
So
I mean, yeah.
Sound Source is it's part of the same family as Loopback from Rogue Amiga, I think it is.
Amoeba.
Yeah.
The single cell
thank you.
paramecium.
That's it. Thank you. I said the right words. It's just my translation was wrong. It's exactly the same. So it's using exactly the same stuff. It will go all the way through the other bits, but I find it's really useful for just this. It's really nice. You can just pop it in, and you can.
I did not realize you could
immediately.
insert a plug-in to Sound Source.
You can.
Interesting.
You can do it on everything by your inputs. I find it on your outputs is easy, but I haven't worked out how to do it in his inputs. It must be doable.
Yeah. Somebody else, Courtney?
I think Audacity, which is open source, cross-platform, and free, will take those plugins. So
and what's the price of that one?
Free.
Oh, nice. Jason?
Available on Mac and PC and Linux.
I'm struggling to try to think of one that's on Windows that isn't, just straight up OBS. That will do it. I bet you Leland knows.
Yep, I was just going to say vMix has the capability on any audio input that you include into your selection. If you go to the audio settings within that input, you will have the option to install plugins. And in those plugins, you'll see a stack of that list. You can also show that particular plugin's interface so that you can interface with it right through vMix.
It's interesting the way
just
Michael...
talking over the top of everybody for a second, this is the list of software that those plugins work in. So there's WLM loudness meter. That's on the link that I posted in the Mukana chat. So there is a whole heap of programs on both PC and Mac that it works on.
That's a good resource to look at. And I thought that was interesting the way Michael wrote the question, because he was saying something that can be used on either Mac or Windows, but that he currently is using GarageBand, which I agree is not super elegant, although very cost-effective. Solution. Sky, you're pointing at something?
Bijou, wherever he is.
Oh, I have. Bijou. I'm sorry.
Bijou. Sorry. Yes, what he said.
Yeah. One thing, Uline on Windows, you can run it directly without a host. So if you're using it on Windows, you can just Uline loudness meter on its own. Just put a source into it. Besides that, AudioStorm has the Live Professor VST host, which runs both on Mac and Windows. So you can run any plugins into that as well. And I believe Stan Chan mentioned using Element from Cushview, and he seems to be pretty happy with it as well. So I'll put the links in the chat, but that could be an option as well.
Cool. Anything else?
No, I think
Element is incredibly efficient.
Has the wind blown you away, Chris? Are you still
It's
in tech?
super windy here. I'm surprised you guys can't hear it.
I can actually. When I was making this sound.
You know what? Hold on. Check this out. I'll turn the noise assist off. actually not very. It's not very windy right now.
It's so awful.
But no, over here in Concord, I had to keep checking to see if it was raining because there's sand or something pelting the windows.
Yeah, it's been super windy here too.
Really weird. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? We have a few minutes.
I could point out that there's a lot of hot air everywhere in the panel, but that would just need a rim shot sound effect, and I don't have one of those.
But never so much hot air as on audio day.
To my 16 channel, I'm trying to make use of the equipment that I've got. My 16 channel Mackie, it's just big. Big. And it's all analog.
Did you buy the buy the Anvil carrying, or excuse me, the SKB carrying case for it?
I used to have all that. I've got a 6 foot.
That cost as much as the Mackie.
And
not quite.
And to ship was the price of a college tuition. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
the nice thing about that Mackie is it had like 6 aux sends, so you could do mix minus really greatly with it. And
keep blowing on that spark. Why should I find a place to put it, and is it functional in a studio setting for multiple?
I think what you'll find with that older Mackie, I'm going to guess it's 15, 20 years old.
Yes. I
think if you were to set up a microphone and a pair of headphones and get, I'm going to say a broadcast-ish level out of that microphone and record it, and then record it through your mix pre, I think you'd be astonished at how noisy the Mackie is. I think you thought it was really good, and it may not be as good as you remember.
There's opinions in the room.
Go opinions.
Yeah, but Chris, is that really going to make a difference in a cooking show? Are you ever going to hear that?
Maybe not.
It's not like
maybe
bacon
one thing you could do is you could submix stuff down to one input of
that's exactly what I was going to say. The other great use case for it is it doesn't have to be part of your recording chain. You can use it for monitoring. You can use it for front of house. You can use it. Those aux sends are insanely useful, and they're insanely easy to stereo sum, which is really handy.
Well, just keep an open mic on the bubbling pot in the back, and so that way you've always got white noise. So does it sound crappy? Well, I don't know. It sounds like bubbles.
Is that the Mackie or is bacon frying? I'm not.
Why is she always boiling stuff?
So quick story. I was assistant director on a couple of cooking shows in the late 80s in San Francisco. One was much more famous. It was Martin Yan Can Cook. It was fun show to work on. And then the other one was this guy who was essentially a microwave salesman, and I think they called the show the Microwave Master, and it was all how to cook with microwaves, which is kind of comical. But we were going through in pre-production, we were going through the various set designs, and the set designer came in and he rolls out the set plot, and he's like, well, we're going to have one microwave here, and we're going to have one microwave over here, and that's the front counter, and then on the back we're going to have the the Maytag or the Amana, whatever it was, the bigger one. And I sat there and I said, has anybody considered the Bermuda Triangle of microwaves that this wireless mic is going to be in the middle of? Is this something that we need to worry about? And I remember the audio guy just went, oh, yeah, we should do some tests.
Well, and to your point, I'm not in a studio. I'm physically in somebody's home.
Right.
And so consequently, to be able to put yet another big giant piece of hardware, it went mute, in and amongst my food chain is going to be interesting. So
yep.
I'm not sure someone cooks with microwave though. I believe they heat with microwaves. I'm not sure.
Not according to this dude. He was
all
in. He was all in microwave.
Anything with microwaves. I'm thinking he's like the long lost father of like the slap chop guy. Incidentally, in the 80s, you actually would have been just fine with microwave frequency. Today, you'd be in big trouble because it's right at around 2.4 gigahertz. In the 80s, no problem.
Yeah, it turned out to not be a problem, but it was an interesting question, and it did perk up the audio engineers' ears at the moment. Stuart?
The whole point of a microwave is
Okay,
to
here we
cook
go.
by vibrating a hydrogen atom
We don't
across the
care.
surface of an oxygen atom in a H2O molecule. So it makes heat by friction at a molecular level. The thing is, there is a guy on YouTube who uses a microwave oven to melt metals for doing artwork. So that might be something fun as a diversion to look into.
I'm actually checking YouTube right now. I think the show was
Don't
called
tell your
Microwave Master.
14-year-old.
Go, Greg.
They were going to try to do a cooking show over here at one of the clubs, and they purposely built a kitchen. They didn't use the kitchen that was there. They built a new kitchen in part of the club, but they put in an induction cooktop. Now, if you guys have not experienced that, there is no way that you can use any wireless at all
with the induction
with an induction cooktop. No.
Well, and to that point, that new Discovery Channel show that the woman in Magnolia TV, she's doing her own cooking show. They put in a 3,000-pound marble plate. I mean, marble thing that she's going to be cooking. Yeah, no, not cooking top, but just a surface.
Countertop.
And she's standing countertop, and she's standing in front of two giant windows. Now, architecturally, it's amazing. From a video production standpoint, I'm thinking, oh, okay, you've now locked yourself into that corner in front of two big giant 6-foot windows. Yeah. That's expensive.
Jason,
you're gonna have a lot of
I
shadows.
know we're at the very end. I just thought that this panel in particular might enjoy this.
Alex actually, for the record, Alex said if we hold on until 9:15, which is basically what we're doing, he's gonna hop in and start the after show.
Oh, cool.
Perfect. To that end, I had to explain to a client in no uncertain terms why NAS drives should not be put on top of powered subwoofers. I'm not kidding. And this was a 20-minute argument. See, the audio panel is loving this. He's like, I don't even know what's going on. Like I've got really fast Ethernet and these are THX rated subs and stuff. And I don't know what's going on.
There was a guy who did a video demonstration on YouTube with a NAS rack, and he was monitoring throughput to it on a graph, and he showed that you could just shout at the thing and cause your data rate to go down.
So that's just vibrating the data platters. It's that simple.
In 1998, rather, I was asked to spend 8 days on a cruise ship cutting pieces for a client. I flew into Miami to Puerto Rico, got on the boat in Puerto Rico, and then 8 days around the Caribbean. And my RAID, which was about a 4-unit RAID with I think 8 drives in it, was mounted in a shock-mounted SKB case. The room I was in was super small, so I put my tower on top of the shock-mounted case. Now, if you're familiar with those SKB boxes, they have a certain amount of flex to them. And I was on the 8th deck of the boat, about midship, and there's just enough cavitation in the boat and just the vibrations that the tower just sat there and vibrated. And the first night I was there, I crashed like 10 or 15 times. And it dawned on me. I sat back on my bed and I'm like, what's going on? And then I noticed that the computer was just vibrating. I was like, ooh, that's not good. So I took it off.
You need a NAS gimbal. A NAS gimbal will solve everything for you. You'll be all good.
Mr. Preto.
You said opinions earlier, about 5 minutes ago. I've been sitting here with my hand up. That would be a way better name than remotes for our band.
Opinions?
The opinions?
The opinion.
The opinionators? I don't know.
Actually, that's pretty clever.
This isn't related to the NAS drives on the subwoofer, Jason, but I remember one time we used to back up both the EDC lighting console, and there was something in the audio booth that we backed up on floppies. And I would cart some extras around, sometimes in my pocket or some. And I forgot the day when I had to run the degosser in the tape duplication department.
Raise your hands if you know what a degausser is.
Yeah, so the degausser is when you were
all
duplicating
know.
tapes, you would have a machine. We had the
Keep
actual
your
belt
hand
one.
raised if your degausser is within hand's reach.
Nice.
Are you
Well, do you have the
serious?
handheld one? This was the belt one where you could put them on the belt and put
Nerd.
on, but the hand one. So it's a high power electromagnet that you would use to erase tapes, but it also erases floppy drives. And so that was not a fun day.
Videotapes and just about everything else that
And
has
and
any
credit
sort
cards.
of ferromagnetic
Credit
property.
cards,
Yeah.
everything.
Magnetic media.
So those are
you
good
had to-
war stories.
You leave your wallet down the hall when you go to degauss the tapes.
Credit cards.
Just because we're killing time, Chris,
Watch.
it is dead still in San Diego. You have lots
What's
of
that?
wind. We have no wind in San Diego. It's dead still.
No.
Still in Hollywood, but
That
they had
proves
today's the day
California's a
they.
big state.
So
today's
for the
day
record,
they rolled
Bill,
out the vaccine, the giant vaccine places at Disneyland and at Dodger Stadium and in Northridge, and they had to close the one at Disneyland because of the wind, because it was just blowing those giant tents away. So they had to.
Completely off topic, but Starbucks is opening their opportunities to possibly learn how to be a provider of that service.
like a latte
They
and a
don't
vaccine.
make coffee.
Well, again, they already serve how many millions of people a day and have an infrastructure, and so they're stepping into that. But that's an off topic. Sorry.
If they can just
Sky.
stop kicking people out of their bathrooms, I'll be happy.
That's been
Virtual
discussed.
barista, huh?
They shut the entire company down to address that exact issue. So yes.
Yeah, I know.
So somebody
Stuart.
said Sky. Stuart.
Two things. I'll come back to the second one in a moment. But firstly, Sky, does that mean that they are going to start serving coffee? But earlier we were asking about monitors and VESA mounts and what have you. And I happened to notice while I was looking at the Feel World website, there's a competitor to the ATEM Mini from them. Has anybody tried it?
There's a few different ones coming out of China right now that I've seen, off brands.
I don't believe it's allowed in this group.
Hey, we actually have
That's a good
questions
point.
coming in, guys. That's amazing. But people have realized we're stretching for time.
Harrison.
So
let's go to the
Guy
first one.
Guy says, how many on the panel have their mic routed to hear themselves? Discuss. I can hear myself.
So
I
I
can.
think it's vital. Currently, I am not because I switched to my ear pods because it's about to be waffle hour here in Emeryville. Waffle
Hour in Emeryville. That'd be a good title for a short play.
This is one of the things I've been saying to Paul Wallace all the time, because he always does this, and when he does his mic checks, he's like, I'm looking over here. It's like, if you could see where your voice goes, Paul, you would change. And the only way we can see where our voice goes is if we monitor it on our headphones. So I think everybody should. Period.
I used to do a thing when I was traveling for Video Maker magazine, trying to teach beginning tech skills and things like that. And I would take the audience and say, everybody, just for a second, know you're safe. I want you to close your eyes. I'm going to tell you something. And I'd say, my name's Bill Davis, and I've been doing this for about 15 years, and blah, blah, blah. And then I would say, now open your eyes. And I would go, I said, you got audio without video and video without audio. What's the most important? And it's hopefully that woke them up to how much of the information is carried by the soundtrack and why we are so obsessive about the quality of audio, the quality of recorded speech, and getting it reproduced as accurately as possible, because it does a lot of the heavy lifting and content.
Television without sound is technical difficulties, but television without a picture is radio.
Right.
Commercials without sound are hysterical.
Can I come back to the question?
Sure.
So very quickly, I use the PreSonus Studio 24. So I have a mix on that allows me to mix in what's coming from my mic into my ears. But what I also do is I use loopback. So when I'm doing live events, I tend to put one thing in one ear and I mix it slightly out, so I'm listening to different mixes. So Because when you're sitting there doing something like StreamYard, you're not sure where the noise is coming from. So you're trying to work out, is the noise on the live or is the noise somewhere else? And so I sometimes will mix it and fade it through. But I always listen to myself. Maybe because nobody wants to listen to me.
Hey, Leo, your mic is pointed sideways. Now, again,
Yeah.
from a video point of view, that feels back. It feels sideways because as Chris is moving his head from side to side, we're not hearing the solid sound. But you are physically turning that mic, so consequently, I'm deducing that mic's sweet spot is on the side.
The sweet spot on this mic is here in front of me here. So it would normally be upright, but it seems the funny thing with this mic, it's not that expensive. It's a Marantz NPM 1000. I got it on a Amazon sale as I needed a mic. And then everybody that's ever said it said, oh, you sound really great on that mic. So I'm putting it down to the mic and not my voice.
So just for
there is a
grid,
technical
look
thing
at-
called
turn it-
side
turn-
address mics as opposed to top address.
So turn it, point it straight at you. Talk to the top of it. What would it
To
sound
the top.
like?
No, I mean, if I talk around the mic, I'm going to lose the whole of my voice.
No,
as
it's
I talk
definitely
around
not the
mic.
top.
It's a side address mic or a front address. It'll be front, isn't it? Normally,
It's like
just-
like this one, but Sky.
Yeah.
I talk into this surface back here, but
Yeah.
not into the top.
Most large
Yeah.
diaphragm condensers are side address, I think, more of them than not. And
it's got that
dynamics-
heart sign on it.
I would say, Leo, that
do you-
it seems as though if you were to take your boom
Yeah.
and take the part that's hanging straight down and point it out and then lower the boom, you could do more like what I'm doing where you don't have to have this big thing in the frame.
Now, learning
Correct.
by doing, Jason's talking straight into the top of that mic.
PR40 is a
Knowing
different
what
mic.
your mic.
PR40 is an like straight on
Yeah.
firing mic because of the off axis rejection. The moment I come away from this, it's going to completely ruin it.
Yeah, the only reason I'm not doing what you're saying is literally because my desk has got shelving in it, and the only place I could put the mic, the actual clamp is right near the top. Sorry, I've just gone and touched the cable. Sorry about that. And it's just how it fits in. But I would normally do it, and actually because I've run the mic quite close to the edge normally, and I like the sign behind me, it's a view that I've got used to.
And most diaphragms in side address mics are actually round. They're not like there are a couple of differences, and there's ribbon mics that are linear, but most of them are round. So it doesn't really matter as long as the diaphragm's pointed straight toward the sound source. Doesn't really matter what orientation the mic is in the circle.
Doug Ferguson has a cat mic, but Stuart's got his hand up.
Stuart.
Thank you, Sky. I have 4 points to make.
Remember,
firstly,
we did get rid of the Australians. We got rid of them.
Yeah. Firstly, Stephen Richards, with your next question, that is ideally pointed at Leland, and so we'll come back to that. Secondly, Guy does a visual monitor count as monitoring your audio, because I have the NDI monitor open in front of me with my levels there, because if I monitor at the same time as I'm listening to my own voice as I'm talking, I always hear an echo. Even if it's like microseconds, it's there and it just futzes with what's coming out of my mouth. So there's that. The mic on this one, how we just saw Leo move around his microphone and what have you. I actually spent some time doing that with this microphone to make sure I could look at my vMix computer and not be off mic by sitting in the cardioid pattern of where the microphone is sensitive. And I think I've covered the points that I was going to make.
That's 4. You only get 4. Sorry, you're out.
We're going to keep going with this. We actually have 2 more questions.
Okay.
Want to move on?
Let's go. Yep,
Okay.
next one.
Stephen Richards of Ottawa, Ontario says, I'm doing some research for real-time speech-to-text apps. I recall seeing a panelist with a real-time display of his speech. Could you please tell me who and any info on the tech? And yes, he's here, and it was our dear friend Leland Best who was doing auto-captioning straight to the screen of what we were saying while we were saying it in actual real time. And I don't think he knew I was going to go to him, so I don't think
Was that 2 questions in one? I thought just for a second we were talking about using Stream Deck Companion remotely, and then all of a sudden it went to closed captions, so I apologize. Yes, we used Google Slides. So if you're looking, speech to text is kind of another thing. That's if you wanted to transpose speech into text for the sake of having the context. The one that I was using, which was Google Slides, does not create a text file. It's only available in the slide presenter portion of Google Slides. Web Captioner is one that does save, as does TEMI, TEMI, and some others that connect to the API on Zoom. Web Captioner happens to be something you can grab in the browser, so you have to set your audio settings to what the browser is capturing so that it can get that context sound into text. And then there are some apps you can find in the Google Play Store, actually, and I'm sure the iOS store has some as well for the App Store. Just Google speech to text, and you'll find some that are either browser-based or app-based. You can play with those a little bit. I can probably leave links for a couple that I would have used in the past. The other thing with speech to text is, what are you really going to be using it for? It's some people use speech to text to take it from the screen and put it on top of something else, but it's really a matter of application as to which app you're going to use. So find out a little more maybe.
Shall we move on to Brian or Scott?
Yeah, let's do the last one.
Okay. Brian Anderson, well, how are we time-wise? Oh, we're right there. So Leo should be back. I'm sorry. Alex should be back momentarily. Brian Anderson of Silver Spring. I'm looking for a way to turn a power outlet on and off using Stream Deck Companion. Any ideas? HomeKit or other automated schemes would be okay as well.
Jason?
There are a million ways to do this. Belkin makes a relatively reliable set of plug-throughs that will do this. They are almost all entirely compatible with the Amazon A word and with the Google whatever word. I'm not going to say the Shlomo word, but HomeKit is usually the hard one to comply with. Belkins I find to be quite sturdy, regardless of how you're triggering them.
Clever way to work with those automated digital assistants and not name them.
Hey, Google.
Yeah, that was.
Do something. You should be wearing headphones, so I have no problem saying, hey, Google.
You know, there are participants down there that might just have some open speakers there.
Hey, Google, buy me a salad.
I'm so glad you are on headphones and not out loud, because I have 2 Google Minis sitting here. I was just looking through the companion, if they already had a power distributor in there for a preset, and I couldn't find it right now, but that you have to go by manufacturer name. So I'm assuming there's something you could do with IFT, right, Jason?
I would just simply use OFC. OSC. That's the easiest way to trigger absolutely anything. Yes, you could use if this then that. I think you're getting way ahead of yourself. Leo seems to have a better idea.
It's always good to have an example ready, isn't it? So this is my setup. Hopefully I've got the right one. Click on it. It's going to go. There you go. That's my synagogue. I'm going to do it remotely. My phone is here, so I'm doing it on my phone, but normally I can do it there. And there are the lights going on. And there are the lights going off. That's about 2 miles away. And the lights are going back on again. So, and you can do it. They do it from the Stream Deck on the thing. And we are using the software from the Kasa, Kasa. We're using their app to do it. And it goes through on the Stream Deck.
Oops, Chris seems to have dropped off. Okay, then we'll go to Stuart and then Marty.
I was just going to point out for Brian that check out all the lighting apps that can be controlled from the Stream Deck, because they will have power control in them, and they will probably enable you to use a DMX device. And if anyone wants a giggle on YouTube for doing that sort of control, check out the Home Automation X channel.
If I want to giggle, I'll melt metal in a microwave. Man, I can't wait to look at that.
So the trick is finding the electrical outlets that can be remote controlled. And right, so there are IP controllable electrical strips that are put in racks for servers and stuff, and a couple of technologies for that. There's a technology called Blue Bolt that you can find. You can find some Furman products and some others that will allow remote triggering of electrical outlets from various places. So look into that.
Alex, how'd it go?
It went well. We'll survive another day.
Wow.
So
the level of giddy is directly proportional at this point is directly proportional to the level of concern or caution going into it.
Anxiety.
Yeah.
Anxiety.
Yeah. I'm gonna pop open the hi everybody. Thanks for holding the space. And I'm gonna start the meeting, the post meeting, and but we'll talk more there.
All right.